My son called me crying on Father's Day. Dad, Mom says you abandoned us and never send money. I've been sending $3,000 monthly for 5 years. I drove to her house immediately. Where's the money, Jane? She slammed the door. The next morning, a sheriff knocked on her door. Ma'am, you're under arrest. In court, she turned pale when I gave an envelope to the judge. Chapter 1. The Foundation Man. Dale Morrison had built his life the same way he built houses, with precision, patience, and an unshakable foundation. At 42, he owned Morrison Construction, the most respected building company in Millbrook County. His calloused hands had framed over 300 homes, and his keen eye for detail had earned him a reputation that stretched across 3 states. Dale's own foundation had been forged in the coal mines of West Virginia, where his father had died in a cave-in when Dale was 16. That tragedy taught him 2 things. Life could crumble in an instant, and a man's word was the only thing that truly lasted. He'd worked double shifts at a lumberyard to put himself through trade school, never taking shortcuts, never compromising on quality. When he met Linda Hayes at a county fair 15 years ago, she'd been everything he thought he wanted, blonde, vivacious, and seemingly impressed by his growing success. She was 23 then, working as a receptionist at a dental office, but her dreams were bigger than her paycheck. Dale saw ambition in her green eyes and mistook it for the same drive that had built his business. Their marriage had produced Kevin, now 14, and what Dale believed was a comfortable life in their custom-built colonial on Maple Ridge. The house sat on 5 acres, Dale's sanctuary, where he taught Kevin to use tools and understand that honest work was the backbone of character. But on this Father's Day morning, as Dale sat in his workshop organizing his tools with military precision, his phone shattered the peaceful silence. Dad. Kevin's voice was strangled with tears. Dad, I need you. Dale's blood chilled. Kevin was at his mother's sister's house for the weekend, 50 miles away in Riverside. The boy never cried, hadn't since he was 8, and fell from his bike, breaking his wrist. What's wrong, son? Mom. She told Aunt Carol that you abandoned us. She said you never send money, that we're struggling because you don't care. Kevin's voice cracked. She said you only care about your business and that new house you're building. Is that true, Dad? Did you really abandon us? Dale's grip tightened on his phone. 4 or 5 years since Linda had asked for space and moved into the downtown apartment he'd paid for, Dale had sent $3,000 monthly, not court order support. They weren't even legally separated, but money Linda claimed she needed for Kevin's expenses and her own living costs. Kevin, listen to me carefully. I have never, not once, failed to provide for you or your mother. I've sent money every month, and I have the records to prove it. But Mom said, your mother is lying. The words came out harsher than Dale intended, but 14 years of building his patience have been eroded by Linda's manipulation. I'm coming to get you. Stay right there. Dale's Ford F-258 upped the highway miles as his mind raced. Linda had been playing games for years, canceling Kevin's weekends at the last minute, making excuses about school events Dale supposedly forgot, painting him as an absent father. But this was different. This was war. He built his business on trust and reputation. He'd never cheated a client, never cut corners, never broken his word, and he'd expected the same loyalty from his family. The fact that Linda would poison his own son against him crossed a line that Dale Morrison didn't even know existed until that moment. When he reached Carol's modest ranch house, Kevin ran to him with tears streaming down his face. At 14, he was already showing Dale's broad shoulders and Linda's sharp features. But right now, he looked like the little boy who used to fall asleep in Dale's lap while they watched baseball games. I'm sorry I doubted you, Dad. When Mom said those things, Dale pulled his son close, feeling the boy's thin frame shake with confused emotion. You have nothing to apologize for, but this ends today. The drive back to Millbrook was silent, except for the of the diesel engine and the sound of Dale's mind calculating. By the time they reached the city limits, he'd made his decision. Linda's downtown apartment was in a converted Victorian that Dale had actually helped renovate 3 years earlier, a detail that now felt like bitter irony. He parked in front of the building and turned to Kevin. Stay in the truck. This conversation is between your mother and me. Dad, maybe we should just son. I've spent 5 years trying to keep the peace for your sake, but there comes a time when a man has to draw a line in the sand. Today is that day. Dale climbed the familiar stairs to apartment 3B, his work boots echoing against the hardwood he'd helped install. When Linda opened the door, she was wearing a silk robe that cost more than most people made in a week, a robe Dale's money had undoubtedly purchased. "Dale, what are you doing here?" Her voice carried forced surprise, but her eyes held something else. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "Where's the money, Linda?" She stepped back, and Dale noticed a man's leather jacket draped over the chair. Expensive leather, not the kind a working man wore. "What money?" "I don't know what you're talking about." $3,000 a month for 5 years. $180,000. "Linda, where is it?" Her face flushed, and she glanced nervously toward the bedroom. "You're being dramatic. I've used it for Kevin for living expenses. Kevin just called me crying, thinking I'd abandoned him because his mother told him I never send money." Dale's voice was deadly calm, the tone he used when explaining to a contractor that they just made a career-ending mistake. "You want to explain to me how spending my money translates to telling our son I don't support him?" The bedroom door opened, and a man emerged buttoning his shirt. Dale recognized him immediately. Troy Brennan, who ran a high-end auto detailing business and drove a cherry red Corvette like he was still 25 instead of pushing 40. "Morning, Dale." Troy's smirk was practiced, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "Linda, maybe you should tell him." "Tell me what?" Linda's composure cracked completely. "Dale, we didn't plan for this to happen. Troy and we've been seeing each other for 2 years. We're in love. 2 years." Dale processed this information with the same methodical approach he used for complex building problems. "So you've been taking my money while playing house with him." "It's not like that," Troy interjected, stepping closer with misplaced confidence. "Linda deserves better than being married to a man who's married to his work. She deserves someone who appreciates her." Dale studied Troy with the same intensity he brought to examining a foundation before demolition. Average height, soft hands, the kind of man who never built anything that lasted, the kind of man who took shortcuts. "You appreciate her so much that you let her take money from her husband to fund your relationship." "Dale, please." Linda stepped between them. "Let's be civilized about this. We can work out an arrangement." Dale held up his hand, and Linda fell silent. In that moment, she remembered why she'd been attracted to him in the first place. The quiet authority that made subcontractors stop talking when he walked onto a job site. "You're absolutely right. We can work out an arrangement." Dale's voice was almost gentle. "But it's going to be my arrangement on my terms, and it starts today." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Linda, I want you to remember something. I built our house with my own hands. I built half the houses in this county. I know how to take things apart just as well as I know how to put them together. Are you threatening me?" Dale smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "No, Linda. I'm educating you. There's a difference." As he walked down the stairs, Dale could hear Troy's voice rising in panic and Linda's sharp response. Let them argue. They'd have plenty more to argue about in the days to come. Kevin was waiting in the truck, anxiety written across his young face. "What happened, Dad?" "Your mother and I are going to have some discussions about the future. I want you to know something, son. No matter what happens between the adults, you are the most important thing in my world. That will never change." As they drove home, Dale's phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "We need to talk. This doesn't have to get ugly." Dale deleted the message without responding. Linda was wrong about many things, but she was especially wrong about this. It was already ugly. It had been ugly the moment she chose to betray 15 years of marriage and poison his son's mind with lies. But what Linda didn't understand was that Dale Morrison had been dealing with ugly problems his entire life, and he'd never failed to find solution. Chapter 2: Blueprints for Destruction. Dale spent the next morning in his home office, a converted bedroom lined with filing cabinets and project boards. While Kevin slept in, Dale spread his financial records across the oak desk he'd built himself. Bank statements, canceled checks, money transfer receipts, 5 years of meticulous documentation. Every month, like clockwork, $3,000 had moved from his business account to Linda's personal account. He'd kept records because that's what responsible men did, but now these papers represented something more valuable than mere bookkeeping. They were ammunition. His lawyer, Greg Hoffman, arrived at 10 sharp. Greg was old school, a man who still wore suspenders and carried a leather briefcase that had seen 3 decades of legal battles. Dale had used him for business contracts and real estate deals, but today's conversation would be different. "Dale, I have to say, I never saw this coming with Linda." Greg settled into the leather chair across from Dale's desk. She always seemed devoted to the family. That's what I thought too. Dale slid a folder across the desk, but appearances can be deceiving. Take a look at this. Greg whistled low as he reviewed the financial records. $180,000 over 5 years. Jesus, Dale. And she's been telling people you don't support them? Gets worse. Dale poured coffee from the thermal carafe he'd brought from the kitchen. She's been living with another man for 2 years while taking my money. Troy Brennan. You know him? The car detailing guy? Yeah, I know him. Flashy type. Drives that red Corvette. Always seemed like more flash than substance. Greg looked up from the papers. Dale, with this documentation, we can file for divorce and make a strong case for fraud. You could probably get most of this money back. I don't want a divorce. Greg blinked. Come again. We're not legally separated. As far as the law is concerned, Linda and I are still married. She's been taking money from her husband while living with another man. That makes her adultery a matter of public record, doesn't it? Well, yes, but Dale. And Troy has been knowingly involved with a married woman while benefiting from her husband's financial support. Might be interesting to see how his clients feel about doing business with a man who has such flexible morals. Greg set down his coffee cup carefully. What exactly are you planning? Dale walked to the window overlooking his property. 5 acres of carefully maintained land with a house positioned to catch the morning sun and shelter from winter winds. He designed every detail himself, thinking it would be his family's forever home. Greg, I need you to do some research for me. I want to know everything about Troy Brennan, his business, his finances, his reputation. I want to know who his clients are, where he gets his supplies, who holds his business loans. Dale, that sounds like you're planning something that could get you in trouble. I'm planning to protect my interests and my son's future. That's what fathers do. Dale turned back to his lawyer. I also need you to look into Linda's activities. Bank records, credit reports, anything that's public record. If she's been spending my money on luxuries while claiming poverty, I want documentation. Greg was quiet for a long moment. You know, there might be a simpler way to handle this. We could file for divorce, seek an injunction to stop the payments, and let the court sort out the financial issues. The court. Dale's voice carried a hint of disgust. The same court system that takes 2 years to resolve a custody dispute while children suffer. The same system that awards alimony to cheating spouses because they've become accustomed to a lifestyle? Dale, I understand you're angry. I'm not angry, Greg. Anger is a hot emotion, and hot emotions lead to poor decisions. I'm cold. I'm calculating, and I'm going to handle this my way. After Greg left, Dale drove to his main construction site, a luxury development where he was building 4 custom homes. The houses were in various stages of completion, and Dale found a familiar rhythm of construction work helped him think clearly. His foreman, Ray Castellanos, was a man who'd worked for Dale for 8 years. Ray understood that in construction, mistakes had consequences, and second chances were rare. Boss, we got a problem with the electrical inspector. He's demanding changes to work that was already approved. Ray spat tobacco juice into a paper cup. Says the code changed, and we need to rewire the entire second floor of House 3. When did the code change? Last week, but the permit was pulled 2 months ago under the old code. Dale nodded. Schedule a meeting with the inspector. Sometimes these things can be resolved with a conversation, but as Ray walked away, Dale's mind wasn't on electrical codes. He was thinking about Linda and Troy and how they built their relationship on a foundation of deception. In construction, a weak foundation inevitably led to collapse. The only question was timing. That afternoon, Dale drove to Troy's business, Brennan Automotive Detailing, located in a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. The place was busy with several high-end cars being worked on by a crew of young men in matching polo shirts. Dale parked across the street and observed for an hour. Troy's operation was impressive, professional, efficient, obviously profitable. The man had built something legitimate, which made Dale respect him slightly more than he would a simple grifter, but also made him more dangerous. Troy emerged from the building around 3, keys to the Corvette in hand. Dale watched him drive away, then crossed the street and entered the building. Help you? A young man with Miguel embroidered on his shirt approached. I'm interested in having my truck detailed. Heard good things about this place. Absolutely. What kind of vehicle? Ford F-250, where truck gets pretty dirty. Miguel's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. We mostly specialize in luxury vehicles, but we can handle pickup trucks. Might take a couple days to fit you in, though. Dale looked around the facility. Professional equipment, organized workspace, attention to detail. Troy had built this business with care, the same way Dale built houses. It would be a shame to see it destroyed. Actually, let me think about it. I might go with someone else. Dale left without scheduling an appointment, but he'd learned what he needed to know. Troy's business was successful enough to support an expensive lifestyle, but it depended entirely on reputation and word-of-mouth referrals. The kind of business that could collapse quickly if the right pressure was applied. That evening, as Dale grilled burgers for himself and Kevin, his son brought up the elephant in the room. "Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced?" Dale flipped the burgers, considering his answer. "Kevin, your mother has made some choices that have changed our family. I can't control her choices, but I can control how I respond to them. She called today. She wants to see me next weekend. What did you tell her?" "I said I'd think about it." Kevin poked at his hamburger bun. "I'm confused, Dad. I love Mom, but what she said about you, that wasn't right." "No, it wasn't. And that's something your mother is going to have to live with." Dale sat across from his son. "Kevin, I want you to understand something. In life, people will show you who they really are through their actions, not their words. Your mother showed you something about herself yesterday. That knowledge is valuable even if it's painful. Are you going to forgive her?" The question hung in the air between them. Dale thought about his own father, who'd been crushed by tons of rock because a mining company had cut corners on safety. He thought about the promises he'd made to Linda on their wedding day, and the promises she'd made in return. "Son, forgiveness is something people earn through their actions, not something they're entitled to because of their words. Your mother has shown me who she really is. I'm going to respond accordingly." That night, after Kevin went to bed, Dale sat in his workshop and began sketching. Not house plans this time, but something far more complex. A blueprint for justice, carefully designed to bring down everything Troy and Linda had built on the foundation of their betrayal. The first phase would be information gathering. The second would be preparation. The third would be execution. Dale Morrison had built his reputation by finishing what he started. This project will be no different. Chapter 3. Surveying the damage. Tuesday morning brought Linda to Dale's door, looking haggard and defensive. She wore designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that Dale recognized from shopping trips 6 months earlier. Another purchase funded by his monthly payments. "We need to talk." She brushed past him into the foyer without invitation. "Kevin's at school." Good timing. Dale closed the door but didn't move away from it, keeping his body language clear. She wasn't welcome here. "Dale, I know you're hurt, but we can handle this like adults. I never meant for Kevin to get caught in the middle." "Then you shouldn't have poisoned him against me." Linda's composure slipped. "I was frustrated. Sometimes I say things when I'm emotional. You've been taking $3,000 a month from me while living with another man. That's not emotional, Linda. That's calculated fraud." "Fraud." Her voice rose. "Dale, I'm still your wife. That money was for Kevin's expenses and my living costs. Just because I found someone who actually pays attention to me doesn't mean stop." Dale's voice cut through her justification like a saw blade. "Don't insult my intelligence. You've been playing house with Troy for 2 years while taking money meant for our son. That makes you a liar and a thief." Linda's face flushed with anger. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Working all the time, building your little empire while your family falls apart. Troy actually talks to me, Dale. He makes me feel alive in ways you never did. Is that supposed to justify stealing from me? I didn't steal anything. That money was mine by right. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of being ignored while you built other people's houses. Other people's houses that paid for this house, your car, your clothes, and every luxury you've enjoyed for the past 15 years. Dale's voice remained level, but Linda could see the ice in his eyes. "Let me make something clear. The monthly payment stopped today. You can't do that. Kevin needs... I'll provide for Kevin directly. You're cut off." Linda's mask finally slipped completely. "Dale, please. I know I handled this wrong, but Troy and I are serious. We want to get married. Start fresh. If you could just what? Finance your new life with another man." Dale opened the front door. "This conversation is over." Dale, wait, there's something else. Linda's voice turned desperate. Troy's been having some problems with his business. If we could work out some kind of settlement. Dale paused, his hand on the doorknob. What kind of problems? Some of his equipment was damaged in a break-in last week. His insurance is being difficult about the claim? He's worried about meeting his obligations. The break-in was news to Dale, but he filed the information away. And you thought I might help him out? I thought maybe we could reach an understanding. I know you have connections in the business community. Linda, get out of my house. After she left, Dale sat in his kitchen and made notes. Troy's business was apparently more vulnerable than it appeared. Equipment problems, insurance issues, financial pressure. These were the kinds of weaknesses that could be exploited by someone who understood how small businesses operated. Dale's phone rang. Greg Hoffman calling with the research results. I've got some interesting information about your friend Troy Brennan. Greg's voice carried a hint of amusement. Want to know what I found? Tell me. Brennan's business is leveraged to the teeth. He took out a substantial loan 2 years ago to expand the operation right around the time he started seeing Linda, coincidentally. The loan is secured by his equipment and property, and he's been making payments on time, but barely. What about the break-in Linda mentioned? That's where it gets interesting. According to the police report, the break-in targeted specific pieces of equipment. High-end polishing and detailing machines worth about $40,000. But here's the thing. Nothing else was touched. Cash register wasn't touched. Office equipment was ignored. Even some valuable tools were left behind. Dale processed this information. Sounds like someone who knew exactly what they were looking for or someone who wanted to send a message. The insurance company is investigating possible fraud, which explains why they're being difficult about the claim. Anything else? Brennan's client list is interesting. A lot of wealthy individuals, some local politicians, a few people with questionable reputations. The kind of clientele that values discretion and reputation above everything else. After ending the call, Dale drove to the construction site where he had a standing Tuesday lunch with Ray Castellanos. They usually aid in Ray's trailer and discuss project schedules. But today, Dale had different questions. Ray, you know anything about Troy Brennan's operation? Ray looked up from his sandwich. The car detailing guy? Yeah, I know him. Good business? But the man's got expensive tastes. Lies like he's making twice what he probably is. How do you know that? My nephew worked for him last summer. Said Brennan was always stressed about money. Always looking for ways to cut costs without cutting quality. Tough balance in that business. Your nephew still work there? Nah. Kid got tired of Brennan's attitude. Said the man was decent to customers, but treated his employees like they were replaceable. Ray took a drink of coffee. Why you asking? Just curious about a potential client. But Dale wasn't thinking about becoming a client. He was thinking about employees who might have grievances about the delicate balance between reputation and reality that kept businesses like Troy's afloat. That afternoon, Dale drove to Kevin's school to pick him up, something he'd started doing since Linda's revelation. The boy needed stability, and Dale intended to provide it. How was school? Okay, Mom texted me during lunch. She wants to see me this weekend. What did you tell her? I said I'd talk to you about it. Kevin looked out the window. Dad, do I have to see her if I don't want to? The question cut through Dale like a blade. Linda's betrayal had wounded him, but seeing its effect on Kevin made him realize the true scope of the damage. Son, she's still your mother, but I won't force you to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. I'm angry at her. Is that wrong? Dale pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine. Kevin, anger is a natural response to betrayal, but don't let it consume you. Use it as fuel to become a better man than the people who hurt you. Like you're doing, the boy was too perceptive for his own good. Something like that. That evening, while Kevin worked on homework, Dale sat in his workshop and continued planning. He'd identified Troy's vulnerabilities, financial pressure, reputation-dependent business model, employee dissatisfaction, and insurance problems. Linda's vulnerabilities were different, but equally exploitable. Her dependence on Dale's money, her social standing, and her deep-seated need for approval and status. Dale had spent his career building structures designed to last generations. But he'd also learned that the key to any successful construction project was understanding the materials you were working with, their strengths, their weaknesses, and their breaking points. Linda and Troy had chosen to build their relationship on a foundation of deception and theft. Dale was simply going to test that foundation to see how much weight it could bear. By the time he finished his planning session, Dale had outlined a strategy that would systematically dismantle everything Linda and Troy had built together. It would take patience, precision, and a willingness to see the project through to completion. Dale Morrison had never left a job unfinished, and he wasn't about to start now. Chapter 4. Drawing the Plans. Dale's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., same as every workday for the past 20 years. But this Wednesday morning was different. Instead of heading directly to the construction site, he drove to Murphy's Diner on the east side of town, a place where contractors, truckers, and shift workers grab coffee before dawn. At a corner booth, Dale met with Carlos Mendez, a private investigator he'd used occasionally for background checks on subcontractors. Carlos was former military police, thorough and discreet. "You sounded serious on the phone." Carlos stirred sugar into his black coffee. "What do you need?" Dale slid a folder across the 4 mica table. Complete background on these 2 people. Financial records, daily routines, business relationships, personal habits, everything. Carlos glanced at the photos of Linda and Troy. "Your wife and her boyfriend, my wife, and a man who's been living off my money for 2 years. Dale, I have to ask, what are you planning to do with this information?" "I'm going to destroy them." Carlos set down his coffee cup. "Look, I understand you're pissed, but if you're thinking about doing something that could land you in prison, Carlos, I built my reputation by planning carefully and executing flawlessly. This is just another construction project, a demolition project. Demolition can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing." Dale met his gaze steadily. "I know exactly what I'm doing." After breakfast, Dale drove to his main office, a converted house near downtown where he ran Morrison Construction. His secretary, Helen Vasquez, had worked for him for 10 years and managed his schedule with military precision. "Morning, Dale. You have the Henderson consultation at 10, lunch with the bank at noon, and the city planning meeting at 3. Cancel the planning meeting. Reschedule it for next week." Dale poured coffee from the machine Helen kept running all day. "I need you to pull some files for me." "Which ones?" "Every client we've worked for in the past 5 years. I want names, addresses, phone numbers. Also, pull the vendor files, suppliers, subcontractors, anyone we do regular business with." Helen raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of files." "What's this for?" "Market research." But Dale wasn't researching markets. He was building a network identifying everyone in Millbrook County who knew his reputation for quality and integrity. These are people who trusted him, people who would listen when he had something important to say. At 10 a.m., Dale met with Martha Henderson, a widow who wanted to build a small retirement home on family land. The consultation went well. Dale had a knack for understanding what clients really wanted, even when they couldn't articulate it themselves. "Mr. Morrison, I've heard wonderful things about your work." Martha Henderson was 70, sharp-eyed, and clearly well-connected in the community. "Eleanor Whitman says you built her daughter's house, and it's absolutely beautiful." "Eleanor is a good client. We've done several projects for her family." "Yes, she mentioned that. She also said you're a man of integrity, which is rare these days." "So many contractors promise one thing and deliver another." Dale nodded, filing away another useful connection. Eleanor Whitman was married to Judge Robert Whitman, one of the most respected jurists in the county. After the Henderson meeting, Dale drove to Brennan Automotive Detailing. He parked across the street again and observed the operation. Today, Troy's red Corvette wasn't in its usual spot, and the business seemed less busy than before. Dale's phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. "Preliminary report ready. Meet at 7 p.m. Same place." The rest of the day passed in routine business activities, but Dale's mind was constantly working. Every conversation, every interaction was viewed through the lens of his larger project. He was mapping relationships, identifying pressure points, building the framework for Troy and Linda's destruction. At 7 p.m., Dale met Carlos at Murphy's Diner again. The evening crowd was different. Families finishing dinner, teenagers sharing sodas, a quieter atmosphere than a morning rush. "I've got some interesting information." Carlos opened a manila folder. "Want the financial picture first?" "Start there. Troy Brennan is in worse shape than he looks. The business loan I mentioned is just the beginning. He's got credit card debt approaching $50,000, a second mortgage on his house, and he's been late on several payments in the past 6 months. What about income? The detailing business is seasonal. Summer months are good, but winter revenue drops significantly. He's been using credit to smooth out the cash flow problems, which is why his debt keeps growing. Dale studied the financial summary. What about Linda? Your wife is living well beyond her means, even with the $3,000 a month from you. She's got credit cards maxed out. She's been borrowing against a life insurance policy, and she's been asking family members for loans. Family members? Her sister Carol loaned her $5,000 last month. Carol's husband isn't happy about it, apparently. This was useful information. Linda's extended family had always been neutral in their marriage, but if she was creating financial problems for them, that neutrality might shift. What about their daily routines? Carlos flipped pages. Linda worked part-time at a boutique downtown, Fashions by Francine. She's there Tuesday through Thursday, noon to 6. The rest of the time, she's either at Troy's place or shopping. And Troy, predictable schedule. At the shop by 7 most days, leaves around 5 unless he's working late. Friday nights, he plays poker with a group of guys at Murphy's Bar on 4th Street. Saturday mornings, he plays golf at the country club. Dale memorized the patterns. Predictability was weakness in any defensive system. Carlos, I need you to dig deeper on Troy's business relationships. I want to know who his major clients are, who his suppliers are, what his insurance situation looks like. Dale, this is starting to feel like corporate espionage. It's research. I need to understand the full picture before I make my moves. Carlos closed the folder. What kind of moves are you planning? Dale left money on the table for both meals. The kind that will teach them that actions have consequences. Thursday morning, Dale implemented the first phase of his plan. He called Eleanor Whitman, the client who'd recommended him to Martha Henderson. Eleanor, this is Dale Morrison. I have a favor to ask. Of course, Dale. What can I do for you? I'm dealing with a personal situation that might affect my reputation in the community. I'd like to explain the circumstances to you and your husband if you have time. Eleanor's voice sharpened with interest. Is everything all right? I prefer to discuss it in person. Would you and Judge Whitman be available for coffee sometime this week? Actually, we're free this evening. Why don't you come by the house around 7? The Whitman home was a restored Victorian that Dale had helped renovate 5 years earlier. Judge Robert Whitman was a man who commanded respect without demanding it. Quite authority built on decades of fair dealing. Dale, Eleanor says you have some concerns about your reputation. The judge poured brandy from a crystal decanter. What's troubling you? Dale had rehearsed this conversation, but he delivered it with apparent reluctance. Judge, I'm going through some personal difficulties that might become public. I wanted you to hear my side before rumors start circulating. He explained the financial situation with Linda, the discovery of her relationship with Troy, and her attempts to paint him as an absent father. He showed them copies of his financial records, demonstrating the monthly payments he'd been making. Oh my God, Dale. Eleanor's face flushed with indignation. She's been telling people you don't support your family? I'm afraid so, and I'm concerned that these false accusations might affect my business relationships. Judge Whitman studied the financial documents with a lawyer's eye. This is clearly documented fraud, Dale. Have you consulted with an attorney? I'm working with Greg Hoffman on the legal aspects. But Judge, I built my reputation on honesty and integrity. If Linda continues spreading these lies, it could destroy everything I've worked for. What can we do to help? Dale had been hoping for exactly that question. I'd appreciate it if you could share the truth with anyone who might have heard Linda's version of events. I'm not looking for sympathy, just fairness. By the time Dale left the Whitman house, he'd gained 2 powerful allies in the community's social structure. The judge and his wife would spread Dale's version of events through their extensive network, effectively inoculating the community against Linda's lies. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time to begin pressuring Troy's business foundation. Friday morning, Dale drove to the industrial district and parked outside Brennan Automotive Detailing. He waited until Troy left for his regular Friday golf game, then approached Miguel, the young employee he'd spoken with earlier. Miguel, right? I was here earlier this week asking about detailing my truck. Oh, yeah, I remember. You decide what you want to do. Actually, I wanted to ask you about working conditions here. I'm thinking about referring some of my construction crew for car detailing, but I like to know the businesses I recommend treat their employees fairly. Miguel glanced around nervously. Why are you asking? I've been in business for 20 years. I've learned that companies that treat employees well do better work. Companies that don't, well, you get what you pay for. Miguel's expression shifted. Look, man, I need this job, but Troy's been getting weird lately. Paranoid, blaming us for stuff that goes wrong, cutting our hours, talking about layoffs. That doesn't sound good. It ain't. Plus, he had us working last weekend to clean up after that break-in, but he wouldn't pay overtime. So we should be grateful to have jobs. Dale filed away this information. Disgruntled employees were valuable assets in any demolition project. Miguel, if you ever need work, give me a call. Dale handed him a business card. Morrison Construction. I pay fair wages and treat people with respect. That evening, Dale reviewed his progress. He'd begun building community support, identified weaknesses in Troy's operation, and started recruiting potential assets. The foundation was being prepared for demolition. Monday morning would begin phase 2, applying pressure to the structural weak points he'd identified. Dale Morrison had never built anything that wasn't designed to last, but he'd also never encountered a demolition project he couldn't complete on schedule and under budget. Chapter 5, Foundation Cracks. Monday morning arrived with the crisp promise of October in the mountains. Dale started the day with a phone call to Jim Bradley, who owned Bradley Insurance, the company that covered most of the contractors and small businesses in Millbrook County. Jim, it's Dale Morrison. I need some information about business insurance policies. Sure, Dale. You're looking to increase your coverage? Actually, I'm researching a potential client who's had some equipment stolen. Troy Brennan at Brennan Automotive Detailing. You know anything about his situation? Jim's voice became cautious. Dale, I can't discuss specific clients. Of course not. I'm just wondering about the general process for equipment theft claims. My own policy might need updating. Well, generally speaking, equipment theft claims require police reports, proof of ownership, and detailed inventories. We've had some cases lately where the documentation was questionable. Dale understood the subtext. Thanks, Jim. I'll give you a call about updating my policy soon. Next, Dale contacted Mike Rodriguez, who owned Rodriguez Equipment Rental, the company that supplied specialized tools to most area businesses. Mike, I'm thinking about expanding into vehicle restoration. You rent detailing equipment, some basic stuff. Yeah? But if you want professional-grade equipment, you're looking at purchasing. That stuff's expensive. What about used equipment? Anyone selling lately? Funny you ask. Had a guy come in last week looking to rent equipment that he said was similar to stuff he'd lost in a break-in. Brennan, I think his name was, but when I showed him rental rates, he couldn't afford it. Dale thanked Mike and hung up. Troy's financial pressure was increasing, which meant he'd be more vulnerable to additional stress. At noon, Dale drove to Fashions by Francine, the boutique where Linda worked part-time. He didn't go inside. Instead, he positioned himself at a coffee shop across the street with a clear view of the entrance. Linda arrived at 11:45, 15 minutes early. She looked stressed, checking her phone constantly and smoking cigarettes between customers. At 2 p.m., she stepped outside and made a phone call that became increasingly animated, arms gesturing, face flushed with apparent anger. Dale's own phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. More info on Troy's poker game. Regular players include 3 guys with gambling debts to some questionable people. Game might not be as friendly as it looks. This was unexpected, but useful information. If Troy was involved with people who had connections to serious money problems, that added another layer of vulnerability. That afternoon, Dale implemented the next phase of his plan. He called 6 of Troy's biggest clients, wealthy individuals who valued their cars and their reputations equally. Mrs. Patterson, this is Dale Morrison from Morrison Construction. I built your pool house last year. Of course, Dale. What can I do for you? I'm calling as a concerned member of the business community. Have you heard about the break-in at Brennan Automotive Detailing? No, I hadn't. How awful. Was anyone hurt? No injuries, but they lost a lot of expensive equipment. I'm worried about Troy's ability to maintain his service standards while he's dealing with these problems. Dale didn't make any direct accusations. He simply planted seeds of doubt. Professional car detailing required trust. Clients left expensive vehicles in Troy's care, often for days at a time. Any questions about reliability or financial stability could be devastating. By the end of the week, 3 of Troy's major clients had called to reschedule appointments or ask questions about his insurance coverage. Word was spreading through the small community of luxury car owners, and rumors had a way of growing in the telling. Friday evening, Dale received another report from Carlos. Troy's been asking around about selling some of his remaining equipment. He's also been trying to get a line of credit increase, but his bank turned him down. What about Linda? She's been fighting with her sister Carol about the loan. Apparently, Carol wants the money back, but Linda doesn't have it. Carol's threatening to tell their parents about Linda's relationship with Troy. Dale smiled grimly. Linda's support network was beginning to fracture under financial pressure, exactly as he predicted. Saturday morning, Dale took Kevin to breakfast at Murphy's Diner. The boy had been quiet all week, processing the changes in his family situation. Dad, kids at school are asking me about Mom and you. What should I tell them? Tell them the truth as you understand it. Your parents are having problems, and right now you're living with me. Some kids said their parents heard Mom was dating someone. Dale set down his coffee cup. Kevin, I can't stop people from talking, but I can promise you that whatever happens between your mother and me, you'll always be my priority. Will you and Mom get back together? The question Dale had been dreading. Son, your mother made choices that broke our family. Some things can't be fixed, only replaced. Kevin nodded slowly. At 14, he was old enough to understand that some damage was permanent. That afternoon, while Kevin was at a friend's house, Dale drove to Murphy's bar on 4th Street. Friday night poker was a weekly tradition for several groups of men in town, and Dale wanted to observe Troy's game. The bar was typical small-town working class. Dim lighting, scarred wooden tables, the smell of beer and cigarettes. Dale ordered a beer and positioned himself where he could watch the poker room in the back. Troy arrived at 8 p.m. with 3 other men Dale recognized from around town. One was Rick Paulson, who owned a struggling auto repair shop. Another was Danny Kovac, who'd lost his construction business to bankruptcy 2 years earlier. The third was a stranger, younger, well-dressed, with the kind of alert eyes that suggested he wasn't there just for friendly gambling. Dale nursed his beer and watched the dynamics. Troy was clearly trying to project confidence, but his betting pattern suggested a man under pressure. He was playing recklessly, chasing losses with bigger bets. Around 10 p.m., the well-dressed stranger leaned across the table and said something that made Troy's face go pale. Money changed hands more than Dale would have expected in a friendly game. Dale finished his beer and left, but not before noting the license plate of a stranger's black BMW. Carlos would be able to trace it. Sunday morning brought Linda to Dale's door again, this time without the designer clothes and careful makeup. She looked haggard, desperate. Dale, I need to talk to you. Kevin's at church with the Rodriguez family. You have 5 minutes. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. Linda's voice was shaky. Troy owes money to some people, and they're pressuring him. He's talking about leaving town, starting over somewhere else. And you're telling me this, why? Because he wants me to come with him. He says we can't get married until he sorts out his financial problems, but he needs money to make a fresh start. Dale almost laughed. Let me guess. You want me to help him? Dale, please. I know I've made mistakes, but if something happens to Troy, I don't know what I'll do. I've burned bridges with my family. I can't afford the apartment on my own. Linda, stop. You made your choices. Live with the consequences. What about Kevin? If I have to move away, Kevin stays with me. He's already made that clear. Linda's desperation turned to anger. You can't keep my son from me. I'm not keeping him from you. He's choosing not to see you because you lied to him and tried to turn him against me. That's on you, not me. After Linda left, Dale sat in his workshop and reviewed his progress. Phase 1 had established community support. Phase 2 had applied financial and social pressure. Now it was time for Phase 3, direct confrontation. Dale Morrison had spent his career building structures that could withstand any storm, but he'd also learned that even the strongest buildings could be brought down if you knew where to apply pressure to the critical support points. Troy and Linda were about to discover just how much pressure their relationship could withstand. Chapter 6. Load-Bearing Walls. Tuesday morning brought the first real test of Dale's strategy. Carlos called with information about the well-dressed poker player, Marcus Webb, a business consultant with connections to several high-interest lending operations across 3 states. This guy is not exactly a loan shark, but he's not a bank either, Carlos explained. He provides short-term financing to people who can't get conventional loans, interest rates that would make a credit card company blush. How much does Troy owe him? From what I could piece together, around 20,000. But with Webb's interest rates, that number grows fast. Dale processed this information while reviewing his construction schedules. Today, he was visiting the Patterson estate to discuss a new garage project. One of the clients he'd contacted about Troy's reliability issues. Mrs. Patterson was waiting in her garden, still elegant at 70, despite her obvious concern. Dale, I'm so glad you called about that detailing business. I had my Bentley there last week, and something didn't feel right. What kind of concerns? The young man working on my car seemed nervous, kept checking his phone, and Mr. Brennan himself looked, well, frankly, he looked desperate. When someone's handling a $100,000 automobile, you want them focused. Understand completely. Have you found an alternative? Actually, yes. Eleanor Whitman recommended a service in Charleston. They sent someone here, which is much more convenient. Another client lost to Troy's crumbling reputation. Dale filed this success away and moved to the next phase of his plan. That afternoon, Dale drove to Brennan Automotive Detailing during the lunch hour. Most of the employees were away, and Troy was in his office, a glass-walled space overlooking the work floor. Dale knocked on the office door. Troy, you got a minute? Troy looked up from his paperwork, and Dale could see the stress lines around his eyes. Dale, this is unexpected. I think we need to talk. Troy gestured to a chair, but Dale remained standing. Look about Linda and me. I'm not here about Linda. I'm here about your business. My business. Dale pulled out a folder and set it on Troy's desk. Word is getting around that you're having financial problems. Equipment stolen, insurance complications, clients starting to ask questions. Troy's face flushed. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Mrs. Patterson called me yesterday. She's concerned about leaving her Bentley with someone who might not be able to complete the work. Rich people talk to each other, Troy. Bad news travels fast in a small community. Are you trying to sabotage my business? Dale sat down now, leaning back in the chair with casual confidence. Troy, I build half the houses in this county. I employ 47 people directly and probably support another 100 jobs indirectly. When I have concerns about someone in the business community, people listen. What do you want? I want Linda back. Troy blinked in surprise. Back? But you said, I said a lot of things when I was angry, but she's still my wife. And Kevin needs his mother. Dale's voice carried none of the emotion his words suggested. The question is whether you're going to make this easy or difficult. Linda loves me. She's not going back to you. Troy, let me explain something about women like Linda. She didn't leave me for love. She left for the idea of a better life. Right now, your life isn't looking so good. How long do you think her affection will last when Marcus Webb comes calling for his money? Troy's face went white. How do you know about Marcus? Small town. People talk. Dale leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Linda that you've reconsidered, that you think she should work things out with her husband for Kevin's sake. You're going to step aside gracefully. And if I don't, Dale opened a folder on Troy's desk. Inside were photographs of Troy's poker game, documentation of his debts, and a list of his remaining major clients. If you don't, your business will be destroyed within a month. Your remaining clients will find reasons to take their cars elsewhere. Your suppliers will start demanding cash payments. Your insurance company will find reasons to deny claims. You can't do that. Troy, I've been in business for 20 years. I know every insurance agent, every bank officer, every wealthy car owner in this county. One word from me, and you'll be finished. Troy stared at the photographs, his hands shaking slightly. This is blackmail. This is business. You took something that belonged to me. I'm taking it back. Linda doesn't belong to you. She's not property. Dale's smile was cold. Linda made her choice when she decided to live off my money while playing house with you. She chose security over passion. Now she needs to choose again. That evening, Dale waited. Linda would receive Troy's call, and she would have to decide whether her love for him was strong enough to survive poverty and uncertainty. At 9 p.m., his phone rang. Dale, it's Linda. Troy says you two talked today. We did. He says he thinks I should work things out with you. For Kevin's sake, her voice was confused, hurt. Did you threaten him? I explained reality to him. The same reality I'm going to explain to you. What reality? The reality that your boyfriend owes $20,000 to a man who breaks kneecaps when people don't pay their debts. The reality that his business is failing and his income is about to disappear. The reality that you can't afford your lifestyle without my money. Silence on the line. Linda, you have a choice. Come home, be a mother to Kevin, and we'll work on rebuilding our marriage. Or stay with Troy and discover what poverty actually feels like. You're giving me an ultimatum? I'm giving you facts. Choose accordingly. Dale hung up and sat in his workshop, surrounded by the tools that had built his fortune and his reputation. Tomorrow, Linda would make her decision, but Dale already knew what that decision would be. Women like Linda always chose security when passion came with a price tag they couldn't afford. By Thursday, Linda was back in Dale's house. Her belongings moved from the downtown apartment. She maintained that she was only staying temporarily for Kevin's sake, but Dale knew better. Troy's business lost 3 more major clients that week. Miguel and 2 other employees quit to work for competitors. The insurance company officially denied his equipment claim, citing irregularities in his documentation. Friday night, Troy didn't show up for the poker game. By Sunday, his shop was closed, and a for lease sign appeared in the window. Dale had achieved his objective with surgical precision. The relationship built on his money had collapsed the moment that financial support was threatened. Linda was back home. Troy was destroyed, and Kevin was safe. But Dale Morrison was not a forgiving man. This was not reconciliation. This was the beginning of a much longer and more comprehensive punishment. Linda and Troy had thought they could take advantage of Dale's patience and generosity. Now, for they would learn what happened when a man who built his life on carefully planned foundations decided to tear something down. The foundation was destroyed. Now it was time to excavate the rubble and salt the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. Chapter 7. The weight comes down. Linda had been back in the house for a week, sleeping in the guest room and walking on eggshells around Dale. She tried to resume normal routines, cooking dinner, helping Kevin with homework, making small talk about neighborhood gossip, but the underlying tension was palpable. Kevin seemed relieved to have his mother back, but Dale noticed the boy watching both parents carefully, as if expecting another explosion. The family dinners were exercises in polite conversation over unspoken hostility. On Thursday evening, as Linda cleared dishes from another silent meal, she finally broke. "Dale, we need to talk about where this is going." Dale looked up from his newspaper. "I thought we were clear." "You're here. Kevin's here. We're working on our marriage." "Working on our marriage?" "Dale, you haven't said 10 words to me that weren't about Kevin or household logistics. You act like I'm a live-in housekeeper. What did you expect, Linda? I pretend the last 2 years didn't happen." Kevin looked between his parents, tension radiating from his thin shoulders. "I'm going to do homework," he said quietly, escaping upstairs. Once they were alone, Linda's carefully maintained composure cracked. "I know I made mistakes, Dale. But if you want this marriage to work, you have to meet me halfway." "Meet you halfway." Dale folded his newspaper with deliberate precision. "Linda, you spent 2 years lying to me, stealing from me, and poisoning our son against me. You want me to meet you halfway? I never meant for Kevin to get hurt, but he did get hurt, and that's on you." Dale's voice remained calm, but Linda could see the ice in his eyes. "You want to know where this is going? You're going to be the perfect wife and mother. You're going to rebuild Kevin's trust. You're going to convince this community that our marriage is solid. And what about what I want? What you want stopped matching the day you decided to betray 15 years of marriage for a man who couldn't even afford to support you properly." Linda's face flushed with anger. "So this is punishment? You're keeping me here as some kind of prisoner. You're free to leave anytime you want. But if you do, you leave with nothing. No money, no support, no access to Kevin until he turns 18 and chooses for himself." "Dale, that's not fair." "Fair?" Dale stood up, his full height making the kitchen seem smaller. "Let me tell you about fair, Linda. Fair would be divorcing you and demanding repayment of every dollar you stole. Fair would be making sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of woman you are. Fair would be ensuring you never see Kevin again." Linda backed against the kitchen counter, suddenly aware of how physically imposing her husband could be when he chose. "Instead, I'm giving you a chance to earn back what you threw away. But understand something clearly. This is my house, my rules, my terms. You don't get to negotiate." That Friday, Dale received a call from Carlos with an update on Troy's situation. He's gone, packed up, and left town Wednesday night. left behind about $15,000 in unpaid bills and a lease he can't break. Where did he go? My sources say Florida, probably trying to get far enough away from Marcus Webb to avoid immediate consequences. Dale filed this information away. Troy's departure solved one problem, but created another. Linda would be mourning her lost love, which could make her unpredictable. That evening, Linda confirmed Dale's assessment. She sat at the kitchen table staring at her phone, tears streaming down her face. "He's gone," she said without looking up. Troy left town. Didn't even say goodbye. Dale felt no sympathy, only satisfaction. I'm not surprised. Men like Troy run when things get difficult. You drove him away. I gave him a choice. He chose to run rather than fight for what he claimed to love. Dale poured himself coffee, his movements deliberate and unhurried. Says something about his character, doesn't it? Linda looked up, her eyes red with tears and fury. You destroyed him. You destroyed his business, his life. I exposed his weaknesses. His business was built on credit and reputation. When both disappeared, so did he. And you're proud of that. Dale sat across from her, his expression unchanged. Linda, Troy made the choice to get involved with a married woman. He made the choice to live off another man's money. He made the choice to build his life on a foundation of lies. I simply tested that foundation. What about me? What about what I've lost? What you've lost? Dale's voice remained quiet, but Linda could hear the steel underneath. You lost a man who abandoned you the moment staying became inconvenient. You lost the fantasy that someone would love you enough to sacrifice for you. You lost the illusion that your actions don't have consequences. Linda wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. Dale, I know I hurt you, but can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? For Kevin's sake, if not for mine. Dale studied his wife's tear-stained face, remembering the woman he'd married 15 years ago. She'd been beautiful then, full of dreams and apparent devotion, but that woman had revealed herself to be an illusion, a performance designed to secure financial stability. Linda, forgiveness is earned through actions, not words. You have years of rebuilding to do before we even discuss forgiveness. Years. You stole 2 years of my life and nearly destroyed my relationship with my son. You think a few tears and apologies erase that. Linda stared at him, beginning to understand the depth of his resolve. Dale, if you can't forgive me, why are you keeping me here? Because Kevin needs a mother, and because I want everyone in this community to see that Dale Morrison is a man who honors his commitments, even when others don't honor theirs. Your presence here serves my purposes. The brutal honesty of his words hit Linda like a physical blow. So, I'm just useful to you? Right now, that's all you are. Whether you become anything more depends entirely on your actions going forward. Saturday morning brought an unexpected development. Dale was working in his shop when Kevin appeared in the doorway looking troubled. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you and Mom going to be okay? Dale set down his tools and gave his son his full attention. What makes you ask? She's been crying a lot. And you too, you're polite to each other, but it doesn't feel real. Kevin was too perceptive for his own good. Dale had hoped to shield him from the worst of the adult complications, but the boy was old enough to sense the undercurrents. Son, your mother broke trust with our family. Trust takes time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all. Do you still love her? The question cut to the heart of everything Dale had been avoiding. I love the woman I thought she was. I'm not sure that woman ever really existed. Kevin nodded slowly. What happens if you can't rebuild the trust? Then we'll find a way to be good parents to you without being married to each other. But either way, you'll be taken care of. Dad, can I tell you something without you getting mad? Always. I'm angry at Mom for lying about you, but I still love her, and I feel guilty about that. Dale pulled his son close, feeling the boy's confusion and pain. Kevin, you never have to feel guilty about loving your mother. She made bad choices, but she's still your mother. The adults will figure out their problems. Your job is to be a kid. That afternoon, while Linda was at the grocery store, Dale called Greg Hoffman. Greg, I need you to draw up some papers. What kind of papers? A postnuptial agreement. Very specific terms about what happens if Linda decides to leave again. Dale, that's unusual. Most people do prenups before marriage, not 15 years after. Most people don't have to deal with a spouse who's already proven their willingness to steal. Dale's voice was matter of fact. I want everything documented. Her financial obligations, her parental responsibilities, the consequences of future infidelity. This sounds like you're preparing for war. I'm preparing for reality. If Linda wants to stay married, she'll sign. If she doesn't, we'll know where we stand. By Sunday evening, Dale had the draft agreement, 27 pages of legal language that essentially made Linda a conditional partner in her own marriage. She would have limited access to marital assets, no ability to take on debt without Dale's approval, and severe financial penalties for any future infidelity. When he presented it to her Sunday night, Linda read the first few pages before setting it aside. I can't sign this. This isn't a marriage contract. It's indentured servitude. It's accountability, something you've avoided for 2 years. Dale, if you hate me this much, why don't you just divorce me? Dale looked at his wife, really looked at her for the first time since she'd come back. She was still beautiful at 38, but the stress of recent weeks had added lines around her eyes and tension to her mouth. She looked fragile, vulnerable, almost like the young woman he'd married. For a moment, Dale felt something that might have been the ghost of old affection. Then he remembered Kevin's tears on Father's Day, and the feeling passed. I don't hate you, Linda. Hate requires caring about someone. Right now, you're simply a problem I'm managing. The words hit her like a slap. Jesus, Dale. What happened to you? You happened to me. Troy happened to me. 2 years of lies and betrayal happened to me. Dale's voice remained calm, which somehow made his words more devastating. You taught me that the woman I loved was fiction. Now you get to live with the man that Lesson created. Linda stared at the contract, then at her husband, finally understanding that this wasn't about reconciliation or forgiveness. This was about control, consequence, and a form of justice that had nothing to do with mercy. Dale Morrison had built his reputation on keeping his word and finishing what he started. Linda was about to discover what it meant to be on the receiving end of that relentless competence. The foundation had been destroyed, the rubble cleared away. Now Dale was ready to build something new on ground that would never again support the illusions Linda had once called love. Chapter 8, Final Inspection. Monday morning brought the phone call Dale had been expecting. Linda's sister, Carol, her voice tight with worry and barely controlled anger. Dale, I need to know what's going on with Linda. She called me yesterday, crying, talking about signing some kind of contract to stay married to you. Dale set down his coffee and moved to his home office, closing the door to ensure privacy. Carol, Linda, and I are working through our marital problems. That's between us. This isn't just between you two when she's talking about feeling trapped. Dale, I've known you for 15 years. You're not a cruel man. What's this really about? Dale had always liked Carol. She was 5 years older than Linda, more grounded with a husband who worked construction and 3 kids she raised with practical wisdom. Carol had never bought into Linda's drama or her sense of entitlement. Carol, did Linda tell you about the $180,000? Silence on the line. Did she mention that she's been taking $3,000 a month from me for 5 years while living with another man? She said you two were separated. We were never legally separated, never even discussed it formally. Linda just decided she wanted space, and I was fool enough to keep supporting her financially. Dale could hear Carol processing this information. My God. Linda told me you weren't giving her enough money for Kevin. Linda's been lying to everyone, Carol, including you, apparently. The loan she asked for was probably to help support her boyfriend's failing business. Carol was quiet for a long moment. Dale, I'm sorry. I had no idea. I'm not looking for apologies, Carol, but I need you to understand that Linda put herself in this situation. I'm offering her a way to rebuild our marriage and our family, but it requires accountability. This contract, she mentioned, ensures that if she chooses to betray our marriage again, there are consequences, real consequences. Carol sighed. Dale, I'm not going to interfere in your marriage, but Linda's my sister. If you're just keeping her around to punish her, that's not healthy for anyone. What would you do, Carol, if you discovered that Mark had been living with another woman for 2 years while you supported him financially? The question hung in the air. Carol's husband, Mark, was a good man, steady, loyal, devoted to his family. The idea of him betraying that trust was almost unthinkable. I'd probably kill him, Carol admitted quietly. I'm giving Linda a chance to earn back what she threw away. That's more generous than she deserves. After ending the call with Carol, Dale drove to his main construction site. Physical work helped him think clearly, and he had decisions to make about the next phase of his plan. The luxury home development was progressing on schedule. 4 houses in various stages of completion, each representing months of careful planning and execution. Dale walked through house number 3, inspecting the electrical work that had been completed since his last visit. His phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. Troy surfaced in Tampa, working at a car wash for minimum wage. Marcus Webb's people caught up with him last week. Dale deleted the message without responding. Troy's fate was no longer his concern. That afternoon, Dale met with Judge Whitman at the courthouse. The judge had requested the meeting, ostensibly to discuss a charity fundraiser, but actually to check on Dale's personal situation. Dale, Eleanor has been worried about you since our conversation last month. How are things progressing with Linda? They were seated in the judge's chambers, a book-lined office that spoke of 3 decades of careful jurisprudence. Judge Whitman was a man who understood the difference between legal justice and personal justice. She's home. We're working on rebuilding our marriage. And how's Kevin handling everything? Better than expected. He's a resilient kid. Judge Whitman studied Dale's face with a practiced eye of someone who'd spent years evaluating truth and deception. Dale, I'm going to speak plainly. What you've accomplished with your wife's situation has been impressive from a tactical standpoint, but tactics and strategy are different things. Meaning you've solved the immediate problem, but have you thought about the long-term consequences? For Kevin, especially, Dale had been expecting this conversation. Judge Whitman was known for his wisdom, and wise men asked difficult questions. Judge, Kevin needed to see that actions have consequences. That betrayal isn't something you just forgive and forget. I agree. But he also needs to see that redemption is possible, that people can change and relationships can heal. Can they? When someone shows you who they really are, should you pretend they're someone else? Judge Whitman leaned back in his chair. Dale, I've presided over hundreds of divorce cases. I've seen marriages destroyed by infidelity, financial betrayal, and simple incompatibility. But I've also seen couples rebuild after devastating breaches of trust. What's the difference? The difference is whether both people are committed to becoming better than they were, or whether one person is just trying to punish the other. Dale considered this. Judge, Linda had 2 years to show remorse, to make amends, to demonstrate that she understood the impact of her choices. Instead, she continued lying and manipulating until she had no other options. And now she's learning what consequences feel like. Judge Whitman nodded slowly. Understand your position, Dale. But remember that Kevin is watching everything. What kind of man do you want him to become? That evening, Dale sat in his workshop and thought about the judge's words. On the workbench in front of him was a jewelry box he'd been making for Kevin's girlfriend. A simple project that helped his hands stay busy while his mind worked through complex problems. Kevin appeared in the doorway as if summoned by Dale's thoughts. Dad, can I ask you something personal? Shoot. Do you think Mom really loves Troy, or was she just trying to escape from being married to you? The question was more sophisticated than Dale had expected from his 14-year-old son. What makes you ask that? She's been different since he left. Not just sad, but relieved maybe? Like, she doesn't have to pretend anymore. Dale set down his sandpaper and gave Kevin his full attention. What do you mean? When she was with Troy, she acted like this different person. More dramatic? More? I don't know. Like she was playing a role. Since he's been back, she's more like the mom I remember from when I was little. This was an observation that cut to the heart of everything Dale had been trying to understand about Linda's behavior. Had her relationship with Troy been about love, or had it been about playing out some fantasy of who she thought she wanted to be? Kevin, people sometimes make choices based on who they think they want to be, rather than who they actually are. Is that what Mom did? Maybe. The question is whether she's learned anything from the experience. That night, Dale found Linda in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of tea and the postnuptial agreement. She'd been reading it carefully, making notes in the margins. I have questions about some of these clauses, she said without looking up. Dale poured himself coffee and sat across from her, such as this section about financial oversight. You want approval rights over any purchase over $500. Given your track record with money management, yes. Linda's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. And this clause about social media and public statements? I don't want our private business discussed online or with reporters. There won't be reporters, Dale, won't there? Small-town marriage reconciliation after public infidelity? You'd be surprised what passes for news these days. Linda, turn the page. This section about Kevin, what about it? It gives you final say over all major decisions regarding his upbringing, education, and activities. You forfeited equal parental authority when you try to turn him against me. Linda set down the document and looked directly at Dale for the first time in days. If I sign this, am I your wife or your employee? You're whatever you choose to be within the boundaries this agreement establishes. And if I don't sign, then we get divorced. You leave with nothing, and Kevin chooses which parent he wants to live with. Linda nodded, as if she'd expected this answer. Dale, can I ask you something honestly? Go ahead. Is there any path back to the marriage we had before? Any way to earn your trust and respect again? Dale studied his wife's face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculation. What he saw instead was exhaustion, regret, and something that might have been genuine remorse. Linda, the marriage we had before was built on illusions. I thought you were someone you're not, and you thought you want a life you actually couldn't stand. Maybe that marriage needed to die. Then what are we building now? Dale finished his coffee before answering. Something more honest. Something based on reality instead of fantasy. Something that acknowledges that trust, once broken, has to be rebuilt from the ground up. Linda picked up the pen she'd been using to make notes. If I sign this, and if I do everything it requires, is there a chance you could love me again? The question hung between them like morning mist, fragile and uncertain. Linda, I can't promise to love someone who betrayed me, but I can promise to respect someone who proves they've learned from their mistakes. Linda stared at the signature line for a long moment, then signed her name with careful precision. Dale Morrison had built his reputation on keeping his word and finishing what he started. The foundation had been destroyed, the rubble cleared, and something new was taking shape. Whether that something would grow into love or merely mutual respect remained to be seen. But for the first time in years, Dale and Linda were building on solid ground. Chapter 9. The Final Blueprint. 6 months later, Dale stood in his workshop early Saturday morning, reviewing the architectural plans for Kevin's treehouse. His son had requested something more sophisticated than the simple platform Dale had built for him years earlier, a proper structure with walls, windows, and electrical service. The project had become a family effort. Linda had researched designs and helped Kevin sketch his ideas. She'd also insisted on safety features that Dale privately thought were unnecessary, but publicly supported. It was the first thing they'd worked on together since her return, and Dale was cautiously optimistic about the collaboration. Kevin appeared in the doorway, still in pajamas, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Mom says breakfast is ready in 10 minutes. Thanks. Dale accepted the coffee, noting that Kevin had prepared it exactly the way he liked. Black, strong, no sugar. Small attentions that spoke to the restoration of family rhythms. Dad, can I ask you something about the tree house? Shoot. Would it be okay if I invited Mom to help with the actual building? She says she wants to learn how to use tools properly. Dale considered this request. Linda had been making an effort for months, following the terms of their agreement, rebuilding her relationship with Kevin, participating in family activities without drama or manipulation. She'd also gotten a full-time job at the boutique, and it started paying back the money she'd borrowed from her sister. If she's serious about learning, she's welcome to help. She's serious. Yesterday, she was reading one of your construction books and asking me to explain things. This was news to Dale. Linda had never shown interest in his work during their marriage, treating it as something that paid the bills but didn't deserve her attention. Which book? The one about framing techniques. She said she wanted to understand what you actually do all day. After breakfast, Dale, Linda, and Kevin drove to the building supply store to select materials for the treehouse. Linda asked thoughtful questions about wood grades, hardware options, and structural requirements. She wasn't pretending expertise she didn't have, but she was genuinely trying to understand. Dale, why do you use galvanized bolts instead of regular ones for outdoor projects? She asked while they loaded lumber into the truck. Regular bolts will rust and weaken over time. Galvanized coating protects against moisture, and that's worth the extra cost. Depends on whether you want the structure to last 5 years or 50 years. Linda nodded, making a note in the small notebook she'd started carrying. I'm beginning to understand why people trust you with their projects. You think long-term. As they drove home, Kevin fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from helping load materials. Linda watched the countryside pass by, then spoke quietly. Dale, I've been thinking about something Judge Whitman said at the church fundraiser last week. What's that? He said that the strongest structures are built on foundations that have been tested and proven stable. I think he was talking about more than construction. Dale glanced at his wife. What do you think he meant? I think he meant that our marriage couldn't be strong until we knew what it could survive. The foundation we had before was untested. We never faced real problems together. And now we know what we can survive and what we can't. Linda turned to look at Dale. I know I broke something that may never be completely repaired, but I also learned who I am when everything falls apart. Who are you? Linda was quiet for a moment. Someone who makes terrible choices when she's afraid. Someone who runs toward fantasy when reality gets difficult. Someone who needs to prove she's worthy of second chances. They were pulling into the driveway now. Kevin was still asleep, and Dale made no move to wake him. Linda, can I ask you something honestly? Of course. Do you miss Troy? Linda considered the question carefully. I miss the feeling of being someone different. Troy made me feel glamorous, exciting, like I was the star of my own romantic movie. But that person wasn't real, and neither was a relationship. What do you mean? We never dealt with anything difficult together, never had to make hard choices or sacrifice for each other. When things got complicated, he ran. That's not love. That's just performance. Dale nodded. This was the most honest Linda had been about her relationship with Troy, and possibly the most honest she'd been about anything in years. What about us? What is this? Dale gestured between them. This is two people who know each other's worst qualities trying to build something real anyway. Linda smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. It's not romantic, but might be more honest than what we had before. That afternoon, they began construction on Kevin's treehouse. Linda proved to be a capable assistant. Careful, attentive to instruction, willing to admit when she didn't understand something. Dale found himself explaining techniques and concepts he'd never thought Linda would be interested in learning. Why you check the levels so often? She asked as Dale adjusted a support beam for the third time. Because if the foundation isn't level, everything built on top of it will be crooked. Small errors compound into big problems. Linda paused in her work, hammer in hand. Is that a metaphor? It's carpentry. But, yeah, it applies to other things too. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, with Kevin serving as enthusiastic apprentice and unofficial supervisor. The boy was clearly enjoying having both parents focused on the same project, working together without tension or conflict. Around 4, Eleanor Whitman stopped by with fresh lemonade and cookies, a neighborly gesture that was also clearly an excuse to check on a Morrison family's progress. This is wonderful to see, she said, watching Linda carefully measure a piece of trim. Linda, you're becoming quite the carpenter. Dale's a good teacher, patient with beginners. Eleanor smiled. Robert always says that the best teachers are the ones who remember what it's like to be learning. After Eleanor left, Linda set down her tools and looked at Dale seriously. I need to tell you something. Dale felt his stomach tighten. Bad news usually started with those words. Carol called this morning. She wanted to know if we were really reconciling or if you were just keeping me around for Kevin's sake. What did you tell her? I told her I didn't know yet, but that I was hoping to find out. Dale studied his wife's face. 6 months ago, she'd been desperate, manipulative, willing to say anything to avoid consequences. The woman standing before him now seemed different, more grounded, less performative. Linda, what do you want from this marriage? I want to be worthy of the second chance you've given me. I want to be the mother Kevin deserves, and I want to prove that I can be trusted with something precious. What if that's not enough? What if I can never love you the way I did before? Linda was quiet for a long moment, watching Kevin organize tools in the workshop they'd set up under the oak tree. Then I want to be someone who deserves love even if I don't receive it. I want to become the person I pretended to be. That evening, after Kevin went to bed, Dale and Linda sat on the back porch reviewing their progress on the treehouse project. The structure was taking shape, solid foundation, square walls, level floors. It would be a good space for Kevin built to last. Dale, I have something for you. Linda handed him an envelope. It's not much, but it's a start. Inside was a check for $2,000 and a detailed payment schedule. I can't pay back everything I took, not quickly, but I can pay back some of it, and I want to start now. Dale studied the payment schedule. At the rate Linda had outlined, it would take her 8 years to repay the money she'd taken. But the plan was realistic based on her current income and expenses. Linda, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Not because the contract requires it, but because I need to prove to myself that I can make things right. Dale folded the check and put in his wallet. The money itself didn't matter. His business was successful enough that $2,000 was insignificant, but the gesture mattered. The commitment to accountability mattered. Thank you. They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies begin to emerge in the gathering dusk. After a while, Linda spoke again. Dale, do you think we'll make it? Make it how? As a family, as a couple, as people who choose to trust each other again. Dale considered the question carefully. The woman sitting beside him wasn't the woman he'd married 15 years ago, but she also wasn't the woman who'd betrayed him 2 years ago. She was someone new, someone forged by consequences, and shaped by the choice to rebuild rather than run. I think we might, he said finally. But it won't be the marriage we had before. What will it be? Dale looked at the treehouse taking shape in their backyard, a structure built with careful planning, quality materials, and attention to detail. A structure designed to weather storms and last for generations. It'll be something we built together with our eyes open and our expectations realistic. Something that can survive whatever test come next. Linda reached for his hand tentatively, and Dale allowed the contact. Her fingers were callous now from months of learning to use tools, marked by honest work and genuine effort. Dale, I love you. Not the way I did when we were young and everything was easy, but in a way that acknowledges what love actually costs. Dale squeezed her hand gently. I'm not ready to say those words yet, but I respect who you're becoming. That's enough for now. They sat together as full darkness settled around them. Two people who'd learned that the strongest foundations were built not on romantic fantasy, but on tested trust, proven commitment, and the willingness to keep building even when the work was hard. Dale Morrison had spent his career creating structures designed to last. For the first time in years, he believed he might be building something with Linda that could withstand whatever storms the future might bring. But he would never again mistake performance for authenticity or promises for proof. Trust would be earned through consistent action over time, not granted through words or tears. The treehouse would be finished in another week. The marriage would take much longer to complete, but both were being built on solid ground with careful attention to detail and a commitment to quality that would serve them well for decades to come. Dale Morrison had learned that the most important skill in construction wasn't knowing how to build. It was knowing when something needed to be torn down and rebuilt from the foundation up. Some structures could be repaired. Others had to be completely demolished and reconstructed. The key was having the wisdom to know the difference and the courage to do what was necessary regardless of the cost. As Linda had learned, Dale Morrison always finished what he started. And there you have it. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.
Asterisk after listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. Asterisk.